What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sherdog.com. You are in the trenches. I am Ant Walker, Sherdog contributor, joined once again by a fantastic man who needs no introduction. But hey, I'm just going to introduce him anyway because that's just what I do. I mean, and how can I not introduce a man so incredible, so amazing, so great at what he does, so great at everything that he attempts to do? This man is a national treasure, and we need to value him. Let's give a big round of applause for the homie himself, Captain Credential, Jason Burgos. Jason, how you doing today, my brother?
I mean, when you do these intros, I'm always worried like James Lynch is gonna be behind me. Maybe Josh Gross. I don't know, somebody better than me. But I'm excited. I mean, honestly, did y'all miss us? I know you had to miss us. Europe one designated member Frank McEgger. I know you missed us. I know you were just like, God damn, my Thursday just was not the same last week without Anthony Walker and Jason Burgos just bringing us the best to talk about in MMA. I know you missed us.
And man, I was really upset, man, that we couldn't go on yet last week because there was so much to talk about. It was so rare that we get a weekend without the UFC and without Bellator that we can just jump on ahead to all of the broad sweeping topics. And we get a lot of broad sweeping questions. Typically, we try to narrow it down to the questions that are more relevant to current events, just so we can talk about some things beyond what Conor McGregor's next fight is and all that sort of stuff that we get asked every week. So I was very disappointed by that. Apparently, Google had some sort of catastrophic failure among their servers, the Google Hangout servers that we use. We use Google Hangouts to broadcast this through YouTube, and there was a fire or something, and it shut down Google Hangouts. Of course, it had that fire happen right before we go on, so that was fantastic. that was the MA gods pissing down on us, man, crazy. So, designated member in the chat right now, who's trying to figure out who to blame for the cancellation last week. So he's speculating, was this a sabotage from One Championship?
No, they love me. No.
But they don't love me. And that's the issue, because One Championship, Chatri, it's time for you to come down and get this work. Okay. All right. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it, because we're going to try to play a little bit of catch up. We're trying to condense this to make sure we take it in about an hour's time. And then I'm doing a podcast right after this, and I got some writing to do. So this is going to be a busy night for your boy. And let's get started here. So question one is from the one above all three. So I guess, is he not above 1 and 2? I don't know. Is there the one above all three? I don't know.
Who's the three though?
That's maybe it's a reference to the Trinity. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
but
like
anyway,
the Holy Trinity, the Marvel Trinity, or the DC Trinity. And if you're listening or watching, can you name all three?
Can you? You probably can. All right. So the question that was asked by the one above all three says, why do almost all MMA promoters seem like bad guys, or why do we see them in such a negative light? Which promoter would you consider to most have their fighters' best interest in mind?
Chatri Sid Young.
Oh, don't get me started. Do not get me started.
You know what's funny too is that I think maybe the first time, I don't know if it was the first time or second time, I think it was the first time I interviewed Chatri. I asked him about that because this is really a business, like fight promotion, that I mean people don't seem very good. You know, it's a kind of a dirty business, a negative business, it's an evil business. I mean, Don King really set the stage for like the business for forever. If I had to choose someone who seems like a good guy, I would say Scott Coker. That's straight up bucket list interview guy. Scott Coker, I've always wanted to see if I can interview him. He seems like a genuine cool dude, like a good dude, really doesn't have anything bad to say about anybody, isn't doing any promos before the show where he's yelling into a microphone to get over the sound and the loudness of the arena. Very calm, very relaxed. Just seems like a nice guy. You know, I'm sure there's probably guys on other promotions, maybe like, you know, who's people that are running Shamrock FC and stuff like that. I mean, you talk to the KSW guys, maybe they seem very cool, but like gut first thought would be Scott Coker. I mean, and why they're like that, it's tough because yeah, it's a sport, it's entertainment, but it's still business, and you have to be cutthroat in any business. You have to be shrewd and kind of like that, especially in this, where entertainment is so fickle, the times change, the trends change. You really got to change with it. So you kind of need to be heartless at times. But yeah, that's my thought.
Well, I'm going to take a much more cynical approach to this. And I don't think anybody, yeah, exactly. I don't think anybody who knows me will be remotely surprised by my take on this. So I think the reason why most MMA promoters seem like bad guys, because I think a lot of times they are.
Wow.
And that's just, and that's not an indictment on fight promoters necessarily. I think it is a business that's inherently dirty. It's inherently corrupt. It's inherently just really screwed up.
So do you have to be a bad guy to start, or do you think the business makes you a bad guy and everybody gets into it with the right intentions?
I think it's more the latter. I think it's more so the business kind of evolves people into that. I think when you get the higher level of the promotion, the more likely you're dealing with a scumbag in some way, shape, or form. So we can run down just about every major promoter that we know enough about, and we can find serious problems with them, either morally or business wise. So I don't think we need to run on about the issues with Dana White, and I've spoken with Dana White several times. He's nice to me. He's an agreeable person, I guess, if you're not opposing him or whatever, but he's done some things that leave some question marks and make you wonder, well, is he a nice guy really? You don't know. Scott Coker has horribly predatory matchmaking a lot of times, and that's something that's through Strikeforce days up until his tenure at Bellator. There are a lot of just blatantly ridiculous squash matches going on where people are where they just should not be happening. There's just no business for it in what's supposed to be high-level mixed martial arts. Let's talk about the criminal ties that a lot of people have. Let's not even talk about like ACB or ACA or whatever they're merged into now. As much as I like the KSW guys, I might, if I dug a little deeper, I probably found something I wouldn't like there. Your boy Chatri about to get this work.
He's the nicest guy I've ever met.
He might be a nice person. He might be, but the man and Europe One dropped a question that's on the docket next, and might as well just jump right into it. So ONE FC overturned a kickboxing tournament match to a no contest, claiming the ref couldn't keep the illegal clinching under control. Tournament favorite Petrosian gets a rematch and another chance at winning the $1 million tournament. Should promoters even have the ability to do this? Jason, I'm going to answer this first. No, they should not have the ability.
You jumped right into it. It was like, oh, well, it's a nice transition. You were just itching for the opportunity.
Because I've been holding this in for a week, man.
I'm surprised it wasn't question one. Why was it not question one? Just to get it over with.
Because it was a buildup. It was a buildup. So the thing is, no. So when we're talking about promoters being good guys and promoters being bad guys, this is a bad guy move right here. This is a bad guy move. Oh, but never mind the fact that Petrosian also is one of the instructors at the Evolve MMA gym that Chatri owns. Okay, so this is another example of the ridiculous conflict of interest. So he just arbitrarily decides that I don't like this result. Whether or not you agree or disagree with what the ref did. By the way, the ref is a one championship employee. They operate outside of commissions in Asia. So there's all employees. This is all their people. So now they're what's the committee called? Like the athletic compliance committee or whatever foolishness they made up is going to look at this and overturn the result. Get all the way the fuck out of here if you think there's nothing wrong with that. Please, Jason, please tell me you think there's something wrong with that. Come on, Jason, come on. Well, tell me. Don't leave me on the island right here. Come on now. Is there something wrong with this to you?
No, I don't have too much to say because you said everything that needs to be said. Yeah, it's questionable. I wish today, and it just adds to the questionableness of it. It would have been good if they would have had like a video clips of, oh, these specific instances were what we had a problem with and the bylaws, and this is what it says. But since they did it, it looks extremely questionable, and it looks like a huge bunch of favoritism to Petrosian. So yeah, it's not a good look. I don't think anybody out there is really going to defend it. It just, as a person who does respect one and like one, if I wish they would have had a better explanation than just Chatry, so Young Tom making a comment, post on Facebook. It would at least try to dress it up with some videos, some bylaws, and this is why and everything, but they didn't. So it's going to be one of those things they hope we all kind of forget, kind of thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm reminded of the many, many times that Dana White has just spit fire and fury at officials about the results of fights. I'm particularly remembering the Ross Pearson and Diego Sanchez fight, which was by far the worst robbery in MMA history that I can recall at the top of my head. And I remember the UFC treating that as if Pearson had won. They matched him up accordingly. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they even gave him his win bonus. They treated it like he won. However, on the record, it says that he lost. So there is a compromise in that sort of situation where the promotion can say, hey, we don't agree with this. We think this guy was done unfairly. So we're going to treat this person right. But at the same time, we should not have the power to just arbitrarily overturn results and just decide that, hey, we don't like it, so this didn't happen. Imagine if when Conor McGregor tapped out to Nate Diaz in their first fight. Imagine, please, Jason, close your eyes and imagine a scenario where Dana White said, hey, I don't think this result counts because whatever arbitrary reason he could think, because I don't think the ref did a good job right here. So we're going to overturn that, and we're going to treat this like a McGregor win. It's a win on his record, or it's a no contest. That is lunacy. That is absolute lunacy. If we're going to have a legitimate athletic competition, there needs to be legitimate athletic competition results, and those results don't get a hindsight view. They don't get that. You have to watch this fight and decide who won, who lost, blah, 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 et cetera, and then we have a result, and that is what sticks. That should be what's going on here. But when you have a promotion that not only has control of the agents, they have control of the officials, they have control of every little detail of the rule set and blah, blah, blah. They've got every bit of control and everything. And now they have the right to overturn results because they don't like it. And there's no transparency in how any of this is done. And by the way, it benefits someone who is a central part of the owner of the promotion's gym. Ridiculous. And I'm actually amazed that this isn't a bigger story in MMA. I mean, they are operating outside of the confines of what the typical American fan is going to pay attention to, as we have mostly an American audience watching now. Shout out to everybody who's not American and checking this out. So they're operating with a different set of spotlights underneath of them. But I think this is something that we all should be paying attention to, especially if this promotion has any real intentions on coming to the United States and establishing a presence here.
You know why I don't think it's called on? Because I feel like MMA fans and MMA media probably that's a kickboxing problem. Like I really feel like that. What if kickboxing circles and media, maybe it is a bigger deal? Because I just feel like that's that one element of the show that MMA fans probably maybe fast forward by because it's not their thing, whatever. And I feel like that's why MMA isn't doing more about it, because it's like not their thing, which it really is no excuse. It really, you're brilliantly bringing up a point. It should be brought up on a bigger scale because they are an MMA company along with it. But I feel like that's maybe, what do you think? Like it feels like that's why, like, oh, it's not MMA, it's kickboxing, it's not
that sounds like a reasonable explanation, because a lot of times when we do cover one championship fights, or if we're just watching them just as fans, whatever, I try to watch everything, but I will pay a little less attention to like some mixed rules kickboxing match or something as opposed to MMA. Because it's not exactly in my wheelhouse. So I'll stick with MMA. So that is an excellent point, and you're probably right on that end. But I do think with their push into being a big player in mixed martial arts, which they really already are, we got to pay attention to this. Like this is crazy. This is out of control. Like this is right up there with your man Dave Feldman, the president of bare knuckle fighting, talking about that he's gonna pay your man half his purse because he didn't like the way he fought. Stuff like that is really where you gotta scratch your head and be like, I don't know. This This shouldn't be a thing. And for some reason, it's a thing. So yeah, let's knock that off, Chatri. If the guys fought, they fought, and the result, whether you like it or not, is exactly what happened.
Yeah, right, and then they were going to make them rematch. Like for the person that lost, no problem, but for the person that won and he was an underdog, like that's a tough ass, man. That's just a tough ass from somebody. You're better off just giving him the win bonus and everything he won, and then some extra money, and then calling it a disqual. I don't know. It's a tough ass. Like it's as much as I'm a defender of one championship, this is one you can't defend.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we just going. We Chatri, bad Chatri. Bad Chatri. All right. So let me go ahead and address a couple of things in the chat first. Let's see. Designated member says, to be fair, referees and judges are just a formality in ONE FC since fighters fight for respect and honor anyways. Touche. I see what you did there, young man. I see what you did there. Sean 37 saying Dana has no problem shitting on the refs. Just ask Mazzagatti and Yamasaki. Very true. He has no problem going totally against the refs. Yeah. I've written quite a lot about it for my other gig at MMA On Point. But one thing's for sure, no matter how much he hates what Mazzagatti does, no matter how much he hates what Yamasaki does, or Cecil Peoples, or Kim Winslow, or any other bad official out there, we have to keep in mind that Dana can't change the results.
Yep.
The results stand.
Yeah, and that's like the bigger issue, that there aren't like athletic commissions. For all the crap we've talked about in this show about athletic commissions, there's still an oversight on the UFC, and the UFC has its limits. They really can't do this stuff. It's up to the athletic commission. That's the unfortunate thing, not even just about one, just for a lot of international MMA, that there aren't those set kind of athletic commissions, either, by province or region or whatever. And that's why Pride was dope. Everybody was doping. As much as Pride is revered as the golden age of MMA, a lot of people were doping because of that kind of stuff. And that's something that we take for granted here that, is really worthwhile and special for American and North American fans.
Yeah, I think also too, another thing to remember, when the UFC and Bellator, when they go to areas that don't have a commission, they have commission officials there to function in that capacity. I believe, and you can say whatever you want about problems with certain commissions. There are definitely problems with the governing body in Brazil. There are definitely problems with some of the commissions, like Texas, for instance, is ridiculous. There are issues with some of the commissions on Native American reservations as well. They're big problems. I believe the commission that operates the Mohegan Sun oversees Bellator when they go overseas, and they will function like the results stand. They operate under the same rule sets. It's a certain uniformity that keeps everything kosher. It keeps everything above board. Now, while a lot of these entities may have problems, they all exist for a reason, as checks and balances. And while there may be a need for reform, you can't just eliminate a commission and expect to have fair and just results from fight promoters who, as we alluded to before, have an initial sort of lean toward corruption and bad things. And they are businessmen, so they want to work in the best interest of their pockets, which isn't always in the best interest of athletic fairness and competition. So let's keep that in mind. All right. So let's go ahead and move along before we keep giving them this work. This next question is from Dan Android, who asks, would it be plausible for the UFC to attempt a buyout of ONE or Bellator? Is it more likely the UFC would try to acquire some of these smaller organizations, or would they find more success in cross-promoting?
I actually don't think any of that is really possible in like the current MMA climate. I mean, when Endeavor goes public, that's going to be interesting, because you're going to have a large influx of money and stuff like that. But I don't see anything like that happen. It's not that easy. Like, oh, I want to buy you. I'm going to buy you now. You're mine. It's not as easy, especially something like this where there almost is a rivalry, and there are, places and promotions that have strong markets, and they have a market share of the, particular fan base of the audience. So one has a really strong, they're doing well, and they're kind of going upwards. So it's not in the business of selling. All they're really in the business of is kind of getting more investment and further growing to the UFC level and then expanding. And that's what they're doing, expanding. and even Bellator, I don't think they're going to buy a Bellator unless, something like Viacom decides to sell. I don't think they're going to buy smaller organizations because I think they finally realize the value of small organizations and things like LFA feeding them, Shamrock FC feeding Bellator. And there's really no reason to do that because I don't think they feel like having the extra work of paying for that. Let somebody else pay for it, develop the talent, and then we'll get them when they're really worthwhile to get to the next level. So I don't see any in cross promotion. They're just not going to do. Like, that's why I'm so excited about going to the Bellator Media Day in 2 weeks to see that Sakaki Raba. I don't know. I'm forgetting how to say his name. Sakaki Raba, the guy who was one of the owners of Pride, who's the founder of Ryzen. He's going to be at the media day for the Bellator Madison Square Garden Bellator 222, which is crazy. This is like a legit kind of cross promotion moment. It's not like a full on Ryzen versus Bellator event, but that's what we're getting. UFC is just not about that kind of life, and I feel like right now things are just because the business is so strong. It's kind of going to be, I think, a status quo for a while, unless certain companies just go out of business. I think that's more likely. PFL or Bellator go out of business, and then those talents just move over to UFC or whatever. But I feel like the days of a UFC buying Strikeforce or buying WEC and those kind of things, I feel like that's kind of over. What do you think? I feel like that's not going to really happen anymore.
I think it's going to be over as long as this antitrust lawsuit is pending. Part of the UFC's defense in this is that there are other options for mixed martial artists to go to and earn top dollar. I mean, they've actually quoted a lot of some of the hyperbole that we hear that well, at least I joke a lot about with One Championship. They've quoted that as saying like, hey, there's a huge audience for more MMA outside of the UFC. So, hey, we're not that bad. And you can't simultaneously say that and then buy One Championship. You can't simultaneously say that and then buy out Bellator because it's just not realistic. Now, it's just not going to be a good look when it's time to be sitting in front of a courtroom and sitting in front of a judge, and they're trying to figure out, is the UFC violating antitrust laws? That just doesn't bode well for you. So at least for appearances, they have to keep this the way it is. But then also too, I think at least as far as PFL goes, PFL has almost kind of turned into like a feeder league for the UFC, and they even in a broadcast capacity, because they have the partnership with ESPN now, to where this company can boost the profile of the UFC as just adding extra MMA content for ESPN to invest in, which means they're going to be investing more into their UFC coverage. So there's such a synergy there with PFL. As far as Bellator, you're also talking about a company that's owned by another huge multimedia conglomerate in Viacom. Not quite sure how willing they are to just let that go. And then One Championship, like you said, they're all about trying to expand their own brand. While it is very likely, as designated member has pointed out in the chat, that Bellator, PFL, and ONE FC are bleeding money right now, and by all accounts, that's what we're hearing as well. And I've heard several things about all three companies, finance wise, and it's not too pretty as far as the money that's being generated right now. So it might be possible that they run out and the UFC buys up all their assets, or their fighters just organically get signed by the promotion. That is a distinct possibility. Maybe the UFC could even license some of that fight footage, depending on the rights to it. Who knows? But I don't think, as long as this antitrust suit is going on, that the UFC will be in the business of buying out other major promotions.
Yeah, let me add a couple of things from Jay and the Slacky. He wanted to mention that the one kickboxer that lost, he's actually not elected to drop out of the tournament. They're not going to do the rematch, which I mentioned. And then he also had an intervening question. What are your thoughts about the expanding cross promotion with Ryzen and Bellator, sharing champions, etc.? You could go first.
Oh, I love it. I love it, man. Not only does it open up new possibilities for matchmaking, it's just it just gives you a little bit of that taste of what we've always wanted. We've always wanted to see these champion versus champion fights cross promotion wise. I mean, that was the whole appeal about Nick Diaz versus Georges St. Pierre in its original iteration. was you have the reigning Strikeforce champion versus the reigning UFC champion, and Jake Shields' excitement of coming over to the UFC as well to challenge Georges St. Pierre. So that sort of thing is always going to be appealing, and you just don't see in the UFC too often. You really don't. Even when they get fighters from promotions that were champions, they don't throw them in title fights right away most of the time.
Yeah.
Like we saw Jake Shields have to fight Martin Kampmann first. I'm trying to think what else. Like Justin Gaethje, for instance, he hasn't gotten a title shot despite coming in as a dominant WSOF champion.
Yeah, Benson Henderson had to fight Clay Guida and lost.
Right. Anthony. Oh, that was Anthony Pettis. Yeah, Anthony Pettis lost to Clay Guida after the merger. Yeah. So we've seen this kind of get screwed up in the past. It's nice to see Bellator and Rizin knowing that they are not going to be the number one MMA promotions as long as the UFC is still standing. But hey, you can take a little slice out that market share by joining forces. There's enough money for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've talked about it too. It's in the best interest of really both of them in that. I mean, one championship can get into that, but we've talked about like one championship and Combate have been smart in that they specifically gone to specific regions and markets and really mined that and become super strong in that. And maybe don't necessarily need anybody in that because they're the only ones really catering to that. While Bellator is always going to be a clear number two for a long time because they're in the market with the strongest company on the planet. While in Rizin in Japan, the market's kind of changed. It's not as strong for specifically MMA like it once was. So they're both in a weaker position than, maybe other promotions. So it behooves them to work together more than ever. So, and it's a smart move. It's a smart business move. And the fact that that at least, it always seems like Bellator, even Scott Coker and the Strikeforce ever was much more willing to give and didn't get as much. It seems like Sakakibara is giving more than he has in the past. And Horiguchi, and I think they have one of their women's champions going to fight on the Bellator 222 card. So he's going to be there. There's much more of a trust. It seems like more than ever, and it's great for fans. It's fantastic.
Right. I mean, we got Chuck versus Vanderlei Silva just royally screwed up. So at least give us something. Give us something. So I'm looking forward to that. All right. So we're probably I'm going to go ahead and make an executive decision on the fly, and we're probably going to skip some questions because there are some things that we should be talking about that I'm not seeing a lot of questions on. So I might throw a couple of audibles right there, just letting you know, Jason. When I know you're looking at the question list right now and getting your mind geared up, I'm probably going to screw it all up. But anyway, let's go back to giving them this work. All right, so let's jump ahead to the poll question from last week, which obviously the Google Hangouts fire destroyed that show. But anyway, that poll question was: do the debut losses of Eddie Alvarez and Sage Northcutt in one show the strength of talent outside the UFC? Jason.
So we have at 45.5%, yes, the UFC doesn't have all the best fighters. Next, number two, fans voted 39%, a little column A, and a little bit of yes, a little bit of no. And then after that, 16.5% said no, those losses don't tell us anything.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised by those results. I mean, it is very clear the UFC doesn't have the total 100% stranglehold on the top talent in the world, but they do have most of them. Yeah. That's pretty clear. As far as the Sage Northcutt loss, I mean, you can factor in a lot of things. Right? That is not the most favorable style matchup for Sage Northcutt, being that he is primarily a striker and he was in there against a world-class Muay Thai fighter. Also was in a ring. Footwork changes from being in a ring and being in a cage. And Alexandra can crack. Like, it's just that simple. He can crack, and he got cracked. It's kind of it. So I do think that was some sly matchmaking on one's part to kind of boost their profile. But yeah, man, it doesn't tell us anything that we didn't know before. What do you think, Jason?
I think it's a good thing, and for one, especially if those guys go on and still do good things. Like Nasyukin, if he goes on and at least gets to the finals of the tournament, that's a great thing for one. And if Cosmo Alexandre, he goes on and wins a couple fights, it becomes like a good player in that division, it's for the best because it's name building and star building, because Sage Northcutt and Alvarez, at least on the US end, are still going to be names. They're not going to not be names, and if they win after the fact, everything's good. But you built new stars, you showed that who we have is legitimate and for real, and our brand is strong, we have good talent, and that's a good thing for one. If in the end, I'm sure most fans think those guys are UFC guys, so they're the best, so they should be winning, and they're confused by the fact that they're winning, but it's a good thing. It shows that there's talent outside, and if those guys came in, it would further make them inferior. Oh, look, the UFC guys came in and they're dominating. See, there's nobody good at one. Why am I going to watch this? Oh, the UFC guys that couldn't hack it, so to speak, quote unquote, are killing them. So it's a good thing for one in general. And I remember at a certain time, I would have probably looked differently at it, but once you get an idea of how the business works, like back in the day, I remember when Fedor lost to Verdum. I didn't see that as like a star building. I was like, oh God, Fedor lost. They're not getting the best. No, that helped Verdum and eventually become a bigger name, and then he went to the UFC, became fucking UFC champion. So sometimes you find new talent, new stars you don't realize off of the back of names you do realize.
Very, very good point there. So Jason, if you don't mind, because I saw Jay just put this up in the chat, but I'm going to have trouble pulling it up on my screen. I believe he dropped the poll question for this week. If you can go ahead and run that down for the kind folks here.
Poll question 2. With a 3-1 record in his last 4, should Elias Theodorou have been cut from the UFC? 65% of people said yes, he wasn't entertaining enough. 35% said no, he was winning, and that's what matters. I'm a little surprised by that, but not, because I feel like there has been a brewing strong anti-Elias sentiment for some fans. Maybe it's the hate, because he is a bit of a lady killer and he could steal your girl if he wanted to. But on a certain level, boy, bad timing for him, because god damn, that was probably one of the worst performances I've ever seen from, not even probably one of the worst. That was just an ugly, awful. I mean, the springboard off of the cage to a kick, the really slow spinning back fist. I mean, he didn't leave himself a great case in this one. I think if you look at his stats, he clearly has a great case. But God, when you see the highlight reels of some of his weaker moments in that fight, it's like, oh, I get it. Look at him. He's terrible. But I think everybody, the people who get it and they're outraged with it, makes total sense. This is not sports when you make a decision like this. This is an entertainment decision. And you can't hold yourself up as the elite league of the business, the best talent, the greatest sporting event in MMA that is on this planet Earth. And then you have guys that are legitimate winners, because there's a lot of boring wrestlers out there, and you keep them, and then you let this guy go. So it's as funky as it gets. I mean, Jordan Rinaldi losing after one fight was odd. This is even crazier. This guy's a top 15. Who drops the top 15 guy after one loss to a good fighter? He didn't lose to a weak fight. He lost to Derek Brunson. So, baffled.
Yeah, you know what? And I really wanted to talk about this today, because this seemed to spark a little more angst out of people than normal. Because the name Elias Theodorou has never really rung too many bells. It's not like beyond the fact that he seems to be a nice guy, and and he's a good looking dude and all that stuff. You don't really hear his name too much as far as controversy is concerned. Yeah. So to have the response, I tweeted something earlier this week about how strange it is that, hey, I believe Mark Raimondi of ESPN, he wrote some article about Jimmy Manawa, and in the article, Manawa is saying how he feels comfortable that he will still have a position with the UFC after 3 losses in a row, and he got knocked out, but he feels comfortable. And I'm saying at the same time, juxtapose that to Theodorou losing a decision after a 3-fight win streak. And, oh, man, that's crazy that that Manawa's 3 losses afford him more job security than a 3-fight winning streak followed by 1 loss for Theodorou. I find that very interesting. And, of course, that just opened up a can of worms. And to all you dummies who have the intelligence of a garden salad that aren't getting the bigger picture, that aren't looking beyond the fact that, oh, I don't think he's entertaining, who can't think beyond those prehistoric thoughts. Like,
I never thought I'd hear you do Bullwinkle from Boris and Bull. Fantastic.
Thank you. I was inspired by the morons on social media. We're just like, wow, are you that stupid that you're not seeing the big picture in this? The big picture is that, are we talking about a sport or are we talking about entertainment? And I know this is a debate that we have all the time, but this is something that highlights it even more. To have a guy who's ranked in the top 15, who's 8-3 in the promotion, who was 3-1 in his last 4, and now you cut him after, which it was an awful fight.
And he was almost going to be in the main event. You thought he was good enough to be in your main event.
That was going to be the main event.
Yes.
So what are we doing here? Are we just here to entertain, or are we watching actual sports? Let's think about that. I need answers for these questions because I'm hearing a lot of inconsistent things. That's what I have an issue with. But then also a couple of people. I saw one person in the forum, another person on my Twitter mention problems with the rule set. I think that's an intelligent conversation to bring as far as Theodorou kind of fighting to win decisions and how some rounds are scored. That is an intelligent conversation to start. I don't want to have that here right now because that's going to be very long and involved. but it does open up other possibilities of thought than, I was bored. You stupid fools. Please wake the hell up. All right. There's so much more going on than your goofball ass entertainment.
Like, and it's, I will be the first to say, and I like Elias. I've interviewed him once before. He's very great. He's great on social media. He interacts with everybody. He's intelligent, very intelligent, smart, insightful. But he's not an exciting fighter. He doesn't get finishes, and I get that. That's a Jimmy Manuwa debate. He gets the finishes. He goes and everything. And it's not the greatest thing in the world. But like I said before, there's a lot of wrestlers who are not the greatest thing in the world. I mean, Jake Shields, John Fitch, he really got the John Fitch treatment, which is fucked up. But there are those guys that are not exciting. But this is a sport predicated on winning. This is winning. This guy won. He won Jay, if you could check, what was he? 8-3 in the UFC?
8-3 in the UFC.
8-3 in the UFC. That's a hell of a record. Granted, and we talked about this before when we were doing the fight picks. I felt like he didn't really get the stiffest competition. He gets Derek Brunson and loses, but he deserves a chance to get another stiff test and prove himself. He goes and loses again, maybe a third time in a row. Fine. You to lose once to become 8-3 because you were 8-2, you were top 15 ranked. It's nonsense. It's stunning, and it's the wrong message to send, and it's a transition that's been going on for a while. Ever since that UFC purchase, we care more about the big draw, the entertainment, what's going to bring in the casuals. It's kind of like in the WWE. I always compare them. WWE knows that we got this bunch. These diehards aren't fucking going nowhere. We're going to go for those weirdos that don't really care about it. We're going to try to draw the casuals. And that's what the UFC is trying to do. Draw the casuals with entertainment and knockouts and just losing the sporting element of things. And as the diehards or the people like us that cover it, it's a what the fuck is going on kind of moment. But at least the sport is strong. Elias will now go to ONE or Bellator or PFL and do great and win and do well for himself. So, at least it's not 6-7 years ago where this dude was just out of options and, gonna have to go to some regional stuff and make less money. He can go now, and he's even talked about on Twitter. He's been very open about, hey, now I get my branding back. I can go use my branding and make a lot of money, and I have people that I'm cool with, and now I can put them as sponsors on my shorts. I'm excited. Good for him. Good for him that now he has opportunities. And he's smart enough to be able to market himself right? And he probably may end up making more money outside the UFC now.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I think Theodorou is going to be fine. Like this isn't a pity party for him. This is more of just questioning, what are we doing? Mm-hmm. Are we here to simply be entertained, or are we watching true athletic competition? Mm-hmm. That is the main question that this raises for me. So for everyone who is saying, cut him because he's boring, that's really stupid. If that's the level of thought that you have through this, that's really stupid. Because now like you mentioned John Fitch, and this was well before the WME purchase, but John Fitch being cut at the time he was cut was ridiculous. Didn't make sense to cut him. Didn't make sense to cut Jake Shields as well. And they obviously weren't known to be the most aesthetically pleasing fighters. But if you're showcasing what is supposed to be the best fighters on the planet, you might want to keep them under your roof to make sure that is legitimate. Jay bringing up Yushin Okami as well. That's another one that escaped my mind. So what are you doing? That's it. Are we being entertained or are we watching sports? So hey, I remember, and I've probably mentioned this before, and I've referenced this on Twitter many times, but I remember one of my first conversations with Jeff Sherwood, founder of Sherdog.com. I remember my first conversation with King Mo. It was like, hey, and both of those guys telling me this isn't a sport. So things like this highlight that even further. If it's not a sport, fine, I'll take it. Then we'll just go full on fuck it. Fine. But let's not blend the two so much and then get confused when one side is mad about the other. All right. I like to see sports. So shoot me, whatever. Idiots. Only idiots don't think beyond those which are presented. Only idiots. So you idiots, stay out my mentions.
I mean, right when you said Twitter comments, I was like, okay, this is going downhill. This is not going uphill. This is going downhill right now.
I mean, just the level of stupidity that exists in humanity overall never ceases to amaze me. So I do have fun in addressing that.
And a lot of them vote, which is also good to know.
Which is really, really scary. All right, so let's move on. We'll jump to a couple different questions here. Let's see here. We're seeing a lot of high profile changes in MMA media. I'm sorry, this is from Jetty and the Bins, a frequent contributor. Shout out to you, Jetty. Shout out to the Bins as well. We're seeing a lot of high profile changes in MMA media. Is there a shift in the landscape? Also being asked, is MMA fighting done? And Frank McEdgar at the same time asking, what other MMA journalists do you guys respect the most? So we'll just combine all this because it's perfect timing on you, Frank McEdgar, third host of the show. Let's see here. Now, as far as the high profile changes in MMA media, for those who aren't aware of what's going on in that world, I'll just give a brief synopsis before Captain Credential himself gives off the first opinions on this. Well, there are major shakeups as far as ESPN coming into the media space, scooping up Ariel Helwani, Mark Raimondi, as well from MMA Fighting. MMA Fighting also lost Sean Al-Shadi, Dave Doyle, now Chuck Mendenhall as well. There are a lot of important people that are kind of shuffling around different positions. A lot of those same people that I would say among the guys I respect the most in this business. We just lost James Lynch, which shout out to James, who's got a sweet gig at the Score now. So yeah, there's been a dramatic shift out of some of the most known and most popular names in the MMA media world. And Jason, please give us your thoughts on these changes on high profile MMA media.
I mean, outside of Anthony, I only respect myself. I mean, I don't know about anybody else. It's just Anthony and me. Honestly, it's Falcon and Bucky. I mean, we should just start our own show. It's nothing else, honestly.
Oh, yeah,
don't read anybody else.
You said I'm not Falcon, although I'm the black guy, right?
No, I'm totally Falcon. You're Bucky. You would have the metal arm and a mask and be militant and probably mind controlled and kill people. I don't think I could do that.
Well, I wouldn't be mind controlled. Kill people, but not mind controlled.
No mind controlled? They're probably not. All right. But anyway, yeah. Maybe Jacob Devitt's good guy. He's good stuff. I like his stuff. James. But yeah, it's really just don't read anybody else. Just read my stuff, read Anthony's stuff, and you'll get everything you need. But outside of that, yeah, I think you nailed everything. Yeah, ESPN has had a big effect on things. I just think the growth of the business and the strength of the business has had an effect on things. But I really can't say I mean, you hear things, you hear rumblings. I know Anthony's had heard rumblings. I don't know what's going on in MMA fighting. For anybody that ends up filling those needs, because that's like the Yankees from the late 90s, 2000. That's like as if the Yankees lost Jeter, Pettit, Rivera, Tino, and Paul O'Neill. Like that, Mendenhall, Raimondi, Sean O'Shot, like, damn, and that's like the elite of the elite. That's their top guys outside of Luke Thomas. Luke Thomas is the lone survivor at this point. And you've even talked to me. He's kind of made weird references on his podcast that seem odd, as if it's signaling a possible departure as well. So anybody that gets, those spots, more power to them. I mean, MMA fighting is a fantastic news source. It's one of the elites. I mean, for the last few years until ESPN got into the market, it is the elite. I feel I'm hoping it's a sign of continued growth. What we've talked about, the business is strong, a lot of things to cover. That means that it needs jobs, and there's a lot of other outlets that say, shit, this MMA thing is popular, we need to cover it. So, if people are going to The Athletic or going to ESPN or stuff like that, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping it's not the slow demise of MMA fighting. That would be pretty terrible for us. But yeah, it's fascinating, kind of scary, but all interesting nonetheless. And to me, the word that comes to mind is opportunity. I just feel like there's opportunity out there for the next level guys like us and stuff like that. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, as far as MMA fighting being done, I don't think that's the case. I mean, they're backed by a huge multimedia conglomerate and Vox. Like, they've got talented people still there. They know what they're doing. So, and also digital media is changing overall. Digital media is greatly shifting for a variety of reasons that we just don't have time to get into. But as far as the talent, there's so much talent out there. There's so many people doing good work. And I would recommend everybody just kind of step out of their comfort zone just a little bit. Like, there are certain people I go to for certain information, certain people that I look up to in this media space. And they do great work, but there's always something new out there too. I think you peruse what we have at Sherdog.com. I know I have said this on this show before, but Jacob Debbitz is one of the best op-ed writers out. I'd put him up against pretty much anybody doing this. Jacob Debbitz is fantastic. Jay, who is our behind-the-scenes producer on the show, does excellent work. Ben Duffy is a jack of all trades and masters them all as well. So they are very, very good people all over the MMA media space. I'm going to be jumping on a podcast with Davison Baker, who is another talented guy in the media space. Well, there are plenty of good people out there. Just find what you like, man, and support it, man. That's it. Just support it. Support the people that are really doing some actual work out there. You like a podcast, man, like ours, like it, subscribe it, share it. Promote the things that you like, and it's just that simple, man. And if that's the case, the people that you like, the people that you're fond of, that you like reading, that you like listening to, and you like watching, they'll never go away if they have your support.
I like how Jay in the Slackers said, "Don't forget Oracle." So Jay, are you saying you're like a redhead in a wheelchair? Huh?
Well, no, he's the guy in the chair, like Ned in Spider-Man: Homecoming. He's the guy in the chair.
Oracle is Barbara Gordon, a redhead.
Yeah, but he's just using the generic term Oracle, jackass.
I just rather picture him behind a computer with a red wig on and.
All right, that the credential has been demoted to sergeant. Sergeant credential. All right, ridiculous. Okay. All right. So we are
Nightwing.
Oh wow. All right. You guys are nuts. All right. So we're gonna have to wrap things up shortly. So let's go ahead and skip ahead because we
do the show by myself. So you just go.
Whatever. No. We're gonna do the show, but the thing is, we're trying out some new stuff. So there's new content coming to Sherdog.com, and we've got to accommodate this. So let's go ahead and because some of this new content is coming up right now, actually, but that's another story. So let's go ahead and skip over to thoughts on Ilir Latifi pulling out just days before the fight, Jason. Before we hit the Who You Got segment.
What question is that?
That is question 12 on our list.
Why is that? Is that a rumor? How did you hear about that?
No. It's certified fact. Alir Latifi is out with a back injury.
Oh wow. Damn, that's a shame because hasn't he been out for a while? When was the last time he fought?
He last fought Corey Anderson at 232, I believe.
Okay. Damn. That's a tough break. And I'm disappointed because he was fighting Volkan Ozdemir, right? That was a good fight. That was an interesting fight. I was looking forward to that. And that sucks for Volkan. I mean, it sucks for both of them, but it sucks for Volkan even more so because he's healthy, ready to go, and now he's gonna. I don't know if they are they talking about possibly getting him a replacement short notice in this amount of time.
Well, I mean, no, they just scrubbed it from UFC.com. UFC put out a press release earlier today that the fight was canceled. So
yeah, wow, that sucks. I mean, hopefully it gets rescheduled quickly, but yeah, sucky, bad break. Unfortunate for us as viewers, and unfortunate for them as fighters.
Yeah, that was one I was really looking forward to. So yeah, oh well, that's it. So as far as the Who You Got segment, I'm just gonna skip to the main event here.
Wow.
Alexander Gustafsson versus Anthony Smith. Jason, who you got?
Wow. We are just really undercutting the show. It's like 7 questions still left.
Yes, I do need some questions for Ask Ann as well. But continue.
Because you wonder, is Gustafsson, I know he recently mentioned, like, oh, I'm not worried about titles anymore, just, competing and getting wins. Would you wonder if that fire, knowing, okay, he is not going to get a title shot as long as John Jones is holding that title. And who knows when John Jones is ever going to lose a title? Maybe he costs himself the title once again. But damn, like it's an interesting question. He's been through a lot of wars. He's been through a lot of tough fights. A lot of wear and tear. I mean, Anthony Smith is rolling. He lost to John Jones. Can he take that loss to John Jones and just pick up from where he left off at and just continue to roll again? I don't know. I feel like he had some favorable matchmaking as is with Shogun and Rashad Evans. But where is Gustafsson at this point in his career? I mean, he's definitely, you would think, in the beginning of starting the backside of his career. So my gut is going to go Gustafsson just on a technical skill level. I think he's still the better fighter. Long, he uses range. I think he maybe will take some things for what John Jones did in terms of using his range to do things to Anthony Smith and kind of really throw him off his game and kind of get him to stutter a little bit with his striking. So I'm going to pick Gustafsson. I think, I don't know if he'll get a finish. I think he'll get a decision. It'll be an interesting fight, but my gut says Gustafsson. If he lost, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked. But
I'm definitely going with Gustafsson on this as well. I think he's just overall the better fighter. Thing is, I'm not quite sure what to make of Anthony Smith at 205 just yet, because we've seen him. I guess the clearest test that we've seen of him has been Volkan Ozdemir, because we kind of know where he stands in the division, and that was a kind of a grueling fight. That wasn't the easiest victory to walk away with. I mean, when you're talking about him fighting John Jones, I mean, you're talking about him fighting the greatest fighter that's ever done it. So yeah, you lose pretty badly to that. Just about everyone else would. And then you look at the Shogun and Rashad Evans fights, and they don't really tell you much other than he hits hard, because those guys are so past their prime. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, that was Rashad Evans' last fight. Before he retired. So I think Anthony Smith is still a big unknown quantity at 205, and I'm not comfortable picking him over a man who I think we know exactly where he stands. Maybe there's been some wear and tear on him, but Anthony Smith has been doing this for a long time as well. Anthony Smith has had like 45 fights in his career, so there's got to be wear and tear on that man as well. I got to go Alexander, man. I think Lusty Gusty does it. I think he gets a finish, and I think it's going to be. I think he pieces him up, man. I say in the 4th round. I think we have another Glover Teixeira knockout moment. All right. So because UFC 238 is a very, very stacked card, we're going to do some early Who You Gots.
Wow.
Just a little bit of early Who You Gots. So
very early.
as far as because next week, otherwise we'll spend all next week just talking about UFC 238, which I'm okay with, but we will have other things to talk about as well. So let's ask a question that was given to us: is Jimmy Rivera too much too soon for Peter Yan at UFC 238?
No, because maybe, I don't know. I don't think so. Peter Yan is at that place where, okay, it's time to test yourself. And Jimmy Rivera has lost of late enough that his stock isn't at that like elite level. It's come back a little bit. So he's in that little tweener space between, just below the elite, in between the elite and those guys trying to make their way up. He's right in that at the top of the division, a top ranked fighter, very good fighter, but maybe not the elite. And this is what Peter Yan, this is the test he needs to get now. We need to see this. It's a litmus test for Peter Yan. So I don't think so. I think it's a great fight, fascinating test, and we're really going to learn a lot from both of them. If Peter Yan wins, damn, this guy is one of the best in the division. Maybe we need to start thinking about title shots in the next, maybe for 2020 or something like that. And if Jimmy Rivera wins and stops this kid where he's at and shuts down the fast rising prospect, Jimmy Rivera ain't going nowhere. He's bouncing back from some tough, hurdles in his career. So I think it's the right kind of fight. It's a fight I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. I don't think this is too much too soon for Peter Yan. Peter Yan has done the damn thing against everybody they put him in against. And there's been a progressive level of opposition to start off with Ishihara to knock him out. And then his last couple of fights, I mean, he was able to get a decision over John Dodson. It wasn't exactly the most entertaining fight ever. But John Dodson, two-time title challenger at flyweight, bantamweight winner of the Ultimate Fighter, a very legit name to have on your resume, and then total destruction of Douglas Silva DeAndre at UFC 232. I think this makes sense. Peter Yan should be fighting a guy like Jimmy Rivera right now. Jimmy Rivera, who's kind of in a bit of a standstill in his career, to have to start off with such a spectacular undefeated record and come into defeat recently twice. He's got some questions that he needs to answer as well. And I think this is an appropriate matchup for both of them. As far as who I would favor, I'm not. Oh man, I'm trying to do this off the top of my head, and I'm probably going to go back and forth on this one, but I might lean toward Peter Yan on this one, man. It just, the destructive powers that guy possesses is something insane, and he's a guy that we should be looking at in the future. So yeah, man, Peter Yan, I think he takes it. I reserve the right to change that at any point up until when I have to submit staff picks for the site. So so what's your pick on that off the top of your head, man?
Damn, like, I don't want to give up on Jimmy Rivera already. Like, I still think he's one of the better fighters in the division, but Peter Yan is fascinating. I mean, I'll go with Jimmy Rivera just because I'll go with the experience. He's fought at the elite level. He's fought some of the best fighters. He's from a good camp. I feel like this will be Peter Yan too high of a test, experience level, and this we'll realize Peter Yan's very good, but not there yet. He's coming, just not there yet. And Jimmy Rivera, this will be, the fight where he shows he's just a notch above for right now.
All right. I'm with it, man. All right. So who you got for UFC 238? Tied to Tuivasa or Blagoy Ivanov?
I had to look that up because I was gonna lean toward Tuivasa because I was thinking Blagoy was an older guy, but he only is 32 years old. I thought he was older than me because he looks much older than me. I thought for sure 38, 40, but no, 32. I'm going to go with him then because he is from a very strong grappling background. I think he's like a Sambo champion and stuff like that. Tuivasa has really not fought any top-level grapplers, and I am not unless you're coming from a region of the world, Dagestan, the U.S., maybe jiu-jitsu in Brazil, like, unless you're coming from that kind of background, I'm not a believer in that the U.K. or Australia is going to be able to produce the level of grappling talent in the sport that can deal with a Sambo champion or wrestling champion or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion. So, yeah, he could very well catch Blagoy. He's fast for his size. He's unexpectedly fast, surprisingly fast. But I think Blagoy, he went there with Ben Rothwell, outlasted him, won. I think he'll wrestle him and he'll get him down and he'll beat him up. Maybe he'll submit him, but I think he'll win the fight.
This is another one where I'm kind of torn, because if we see the same fight that Blago Ivanov had against Ben Rothwell, I think Tai Tuivasa wins it. I think if they get into some kind of drawn out back and forth with one another, I think Tuivasa will eventually win that because he does have the power advantage. If Ivanov fights with a little more strategy.
Yes, that would be nice, Blagoy. A little strategy.
I think that's going to be the key to him, and I don't think he'll. I mean, he narrowly won that fight against Ben Rothwell, and there was a strong case, and at the time of the fight, that people were saying that Rothwell got robbed. Don't get me started on the word robbery being used too much in mixed martial arts, but you get the idea. That was a very, very close fight, and I'm not quite comfortable saying that Ivanov would win that sort of fight against Tai Tuivasa, but I think he's smart enough to change it up. I think he's smart enough to try to change up those tactics. As far as the level of athlete as well, they're kind of the same level of athlete from my estimation. I'll go Ivanov, and that's if he fights smarter. All right. So also, let's see here. Will Nina Ansaroff deny Tatiana Suarez at UFC 238, or will Suarez validate the pound-for-pound hype?
That's a fascinating fight because I'm still not on the Ansaroff train yet. She was kind of middling for a while and just got on this very odd hot streak out of nowhere, unsuspectingly. And this is a test. This is a true test if she is really legit. And if she wins it, damn, you cannot deny that woman one bit further. But Suarez is uncanny in that the women's side of MMA is still developing thing. It's not as long lasting and evolved as the men's side, and that you can have someone like a Ronda Rousey, that can come in with a specific kind of unique style that doesn't have a lot of competition yet and dominate with it. And now Suarez coming in with that Olympic kind of level wrestling. There's not a lot of female, unbelievably great wrestlers. Yeah, there's some really good jiu-jitsu practitioners, grapplers, Mackenzie Dern, stuff like that. But, wrestling, we barely have women's wrestling in the U.S. So I would assume there's not a high-level wrestling training systems in Brazil or, Sweden and stuff like that. So, for her to bring such a unique style that's dominant and she's very good, it's just hard to pick against her. And Ansaroff, as much as I respect her, I don't know if she's that kind of test that will turn back Suarez yet. And I just feel Suarez's wrestling is just too damn dominant in the class to lose. And I mean, I'm going to ride with her for a long time, because when you got good wrestling, top level wrestling, maybe the best wrestling in the division, you should be most likely the favorite in most fights.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Tatiana Suarez getting the victory here. I mean, let's pay respect to what Nina Ansaroff has done in her last several fights. I mean, this is someone who overall has had kind of like a middling career, but as of late has been able to turn things around, and quite frankly has earned her spot where she is now. And if you put her in a title shot right now, if you cancel this fight between her and Tatiana Suarez and you threw Nina Ansaroff in a title shot, I'm not mad at that at all.
I am. I don't know about title shot.
I wouldn't be mad at it. She's
the one time you're not mad at something. This is the one. This is the one.
Yeah, this is the one time I'm not angry. So yeah, like I'm not mad at that, but at the same time, man, Tatiana Suarez is a different beast. This is not something that we've seen before with women's mixed martial arts. Nina Ansaroff, look at her victories, and they've been clear cut, but they haven't been the level of dominance that Suarez has shown. To bulldoze Carla Esparza, who at one time was one of the who still is really one of the best female wrestlers in mixed martial arts, and she out wrestled her and pummeled her to oblivion for the better part of 3 rounds. I'm sorry, man, we just don't see that happen. We just don't see that happen too often. I don't think that Ansaroff is going to be able to deny Tatiana Suarez. her time is here. Her time is coming. I think UFC 238 will be her breakout party. That's going to be when the world knows what a lot of people have been saying for a long time. Tatiana Suarez is the truth.
And she's like, not necessarily tall. I was looking at her. She's like my height. She's a short person, but for that division, she seems so large too. And she makes the weight with no problem. So she's like strong, technical, powerful. Like, oof, that is a hell of a test and a beast to deal with.
Very true. Very true. So let's go. And we got one question that we're going to wrap things up with, and I'll check the chat and see if we got anything very nice for us there. Egon Spangler, who, Egon Spangler, we get it from Ghostbusters, but I'm guessing
Aegon,
that
Game of Thrones, Aegon Targaryen.
Okay. Oh yeah, because I haven't seen any of Game of Thrones. So
there you go.
Yeah, there it is. It says, what do you think the impact of Joe Rogan and his podcast has been on MMA and mainstream acceptance and success?
I mean, this is kind of like my Game of Thrones because I really don't listen to that podcast at all.
But you're aware of this podcast.
Yeah, I'm aware of its influence. It somehow made Brendan Schaub some kind of influential figure and now getting a comedy special on Showtime. I personally don't get it. But that's how powerful the Joe Rogan experience is. It's turned him into a bigger star than he ever was in the UFC. I think it's a good thing because he's sort of like one of us in a way. If you're an MMA media person, if you're a fighter, if you're a fan, you're part of this community of MMA. He's kind of one of us, and he's kind of made it mainstream. Now he's having like, not necessarily key Democratic, hopefuls for the Democratic nomination for president, but he's had, people that are running for president on his show. He's had different, he doesn't just do MMA stuff. He does all kind of stuff. He has a mainstream P. He gets huge views. He could very well just drop you in the UFC and do that and make a bunch of money too. So I think it's a cool thing. It shows someone that's really well respected, has a great mind, that's one of us, that's part of this community, that's been a part of it for a long time. And I think it's helped raise the status of the sport a little bit. It's going to take more than just him, but it shows that the sport is like on different levels. It's influential in podcasts, it's influential in television, in culture, in clothes and stuff like that. So it's still niche, but it's a niche with a strong fan base and community and influence on its own. And there's heavy influencers within the industry, like Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I definitely think his podcast deserves some credit for mainstream acceptance of mixed martial arts because his podcast does attract people of all walks of life. He'll have everything from scientists to political people. He'll have comedians. He'll have all sorts of different personalities. And to have oh, thank you for that, Jason.
Order went down.
Oh, thank you for that. That is spectacular. That's exactly what we need on the trenches. Thank you, Captain Credential.
Welcome.
Well, certainly, I hope you don't die on air. So,
all right, good. Keep going.
Good. It's good. All right. But yeah, man, I think Rogan's podcast has been a good way to kind of bridge the gap between some people there are plenty of people who don't know Joe Rogan at all from the UFC. Like they have no idea that he has any connection to mixed martial arts aside from his podcast. And those people become fans if they become a fan enough of Joe Rogan. I was kind of the opposite. The UFC kind of opened my eyes to who Joe Rogan was, to start listening to his podcast. Like, oh, I'll check out some of his stand-up comedy, and got to like some of his specials. Not a big fan of the last one though, but his first two, big fans of those specials. So I do think the more audiences of different walks of life blend in with each other, the more we rub off on one another. And there have been some mixed martial arts fans that have been picked up along the way. So, hey, I'll take it.
I have a unique question for you now. I saw a tweet from Luke Thomas where he brought up where someone else brought up that the Anthony Joshua fight is this weekend, and it seems like nobody notices. And that's surprising in that Luke Thomas said, I wouldn't really even realize unless I followed him myself. And that Anthony Joshua is arguably one of the biggest stars based on where you're at in boxing. He's arguably as big as Canelo and maybe in certain parts of the world. And he's fighting for the heavyweight title in his first fight in the US, and it's really not a big story. And I just thought the idea is because of the internet, because of social media, we're in a really unique time. And maybe you agree with me in that. Back in the day when you had 7 channels, you kind of were only locked into what they were showing you. But now with so many channels, streaming services, we're almost in an area ever, as I was thinking of it, as like massive niche. And that you have something, Anthony Joshua fighting at Madison Square Garden, heavyweight champion of the world. It's huge to some people, and a whole large amount of people don't know about it. Perfect example. I went to like my mechanic recently. I was telling him about, oh yeah, dude, I made journalism. Yeah, I'm gonna go cover an event at Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden. No, most people know that, especially if you live in the city. And the blank kind of, that's nice look he gave me about going to Madison Square Garden for MMA. But for us, it's huge. Madison Square Garden, an MMA event. Bellator's having a big card. And it's a weird time we live in where there's these things that are really big to like these segments of people and a big deal. It's all over social. It's hashtag, it's street, whatever. But there's like a lot of people that don't know what the fuck is going on. Like Game of Thrones. For some people, Game of Thrones was so huge. Anthony Walker didn't know what the fuck was going on.
No idea. No idea.
Yeah. It's that I don't feel like that happened when we were kids. It was like what was on TV, Michael Jackson or something like that. That was it. But it's a unique time we live in where we have these little worlds that are important and everybody doesn't know about it.
Yeah, it's just the changing of media. You got more choices. You've got more options. So people have the ability to kind of sequester themselves and just stay in their world and don't look outside of our world. And I think that's one thing that the MMA community does a lot of. The MMA community is notorious for just living in this bubble that only we understand. And when you peek your head out the bubble and you see that no one else gives a rat's ass what you're talking about, it's kind of strange. It's kind of jarring. It's like, oh, what am I doing with my life? For the moment. But hey, it happens to me at least once a week. My wife looks at me like with total confusion, like, what are you talking about now? So Jason, please tell the people what you have coming up for Sherdog.com.
I don't have too much this week. Surprisingly, I was the benefactor, and a lot of other writers, I was sure were the benefactor of having a lot of stories last week because there was no Bellator and no UFC. So like my Ton Lee, the one championship fighter that debuted a couple events ago, he fought an LFA, he fought a contender series. Real good story. I think it's a worthwhile read about how he was trying to get to the UFC for a long time, and then the door just never seemed to work out. Like he was only offered short notice fights, but whatever. He's in one championship, happy, great. Frank Camacho, who fights this weekend at Sweden, that story came out last Saturday too. Really interesting guy from Guam. He's 1-2 in the UFC, hoping to avoid 1-3 in the UFC, hoping to avoid a 3-fight lose streak, go to 1-4. He changed camp. He's going back to lightweight. He moved to work with Timo Oyama and left Guam, his camp there. So that kind of stuff. But after that, nothing really too much this week. Next week, I should have some stuff. I've interviewed Calvin Qatar. I talked to Kelvin Tiller, which I put up a couple of the video clips of it. You can look for on my Instagram or my Twitter, see what he talked about. One being that right before his quarterfinal playoff fight against Jared Rosholt last year, weigh-ins, gets a call. The man who really helped raise him, not his father, his grandfather, died. Found out at weigh-ins before his quarterfinal fight. Those kind of crazy things happen. And like I talked to him, I'm gonna probably talk to Alex Nicholson tomorrow. Also on the PFL heavyweight, he fights next week with Tiller, and it has some other things, some other stuff in the coals, working on interviews wise that should be coming up. I'm going to be doing a lot more video stuff, so keep an eye out for that, like the Nick Newell interview I have up on Sherdog and on my YouTube. So look for me to do a lot more video stuff. And as always, Cheap Seats Chat on Twitter and Instagram.
All right. So I, of course, am Ant Walker. I will be found on Twitter at Ant Walker MMA, my Instagram as well. You can also check out Ask Ant. That mailbag column should be coming out probably tomorrow afternoonish. I think we should have that done by then. The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, the post-fight series, will be talking about UFC Stockholm. That should be going live either toward the Saturday evening or Sunday morning, because it is an early morning event. So I'll finish that one pretty quickly. I also will be doing a post-fight show on my Walkout network, the Walk of Shame for UFC Stockholm. So join in on the chat for that. Send me your questions via Twitter, and we'll talk about people hitting each other for money. What else? Yeah, I got a podcast about to do with Davidson Baker in a second. That's going to be my next order of business. And yeah, so I think that just might do. Oh, yes, and I do have more video content as well for Sherdog.com. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to have some preview videos, going to have some more interviews. We're going to also we're trying to put together another show that I think will be very entertaining for everyone. But anyway, before I run my mouth too much, y'all got things to do. I got things to do. Captain Credential got things to do. So we're going to call this a show. I appreciate everybody who jumped on the chat and chimed in with your comments, with your thoughts, your questions, suggestions, concerns, unless you were trolling, and then screw you with a broomstick. So anyway, I'm Ant Walker. He's Jason Burgos. You know what you got to do. You got to stay beautiful. You got to stay positive. And by all means, you must stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.